The job was simple. Translate for a Mafia meeting. Stay invisible. Stay safe. But when you can read lips from across the room, you see the murder plot. And sending that warning changes everything. Welcome to Amy's Romance Stories. If you're new here, comment below where you're watching from. And hit subscribe to join our growing family of Mafia romance story lovers. The package arrived at Mia Wilson's cramped Verona apartment on a Tuesday morning, unmarked except for a wax seal she didn't recognize. Inside was a single card with an address on Lake Como, a date, a time, and a number that made her eyes widen. 15,000 euros for 6 hours of work. No explanation. No client name. Just coordinates and a promise of payment upon completion. Mia had been scraping by as a freelance interpreter for 3 years since moving to Italy, taking whatever jobs came through the encrypted agency she'd registered with. Corporate meetings mostly, the occasional legal deposition, once a very awkward marriage proposal. But this felt different. The weight of the cardstock, the old-world formality of the wax seal, the obscene amount of money for what should be standard translation work. Every instinct told her to refuse. She accepted within the hour. The villa on Lake Como was the kind of place that didn't appear on maps, accessed only by a private road that wound through cypress trees older than most countries. Mia's taxi driver, a weathered man who'd barely spoken during the 2-hour drive from Verona, suddenly became chatty as they approached the gates. He asked her 3 times if she was sure about the address. When she nodded, he made the sign of the cross and refused to drive beyond the entrance. She paid him and walked the last quarter-mile alone, her footsteps crunching on gravel, her portfolio bag heavy against her shoulder. The man who answered the door introduced himself through gesture as Sev. He was compact and elegant, silver threading through his dark hair, with eyes that calculated her threat level in approximately 4 seconds. He led her through marble corridors hung with paintings she was reasonably certain belonged in museums, not private homes, until they reached a library that smelled of leather and old paper and something else, something sharp. Danger, maybe, or just expensive cologne. Giovanni Esposito didn't stand when she entered. He sat behind a desk of black walnut, perfectly still in the way predators are still, watching her with eyes so dark they looked black in the dim light. He was younger than she expected, late 30s perhaps, with the kind of face that would be handsome if it ever softened. A scar ran from his ear to his collarbone, visible above his crisp white shirt. When he finally moved, it was to gesture to the chair across from him and begin signing. His sign language was precise, formally taught, slightly old-fashioned in its grammar. He explained the job, a business negotiation with a representative from another firm. She would translate his signs into spoken Italian for his guest and relay the guest's words back to him through sign. Confidentiality was paramount. She would sign a non-disclosure agreement. She would surrender her phone during the meeting. She understood, didn't she, that discretion was not optional. Mia signed back that she understood perfectly, that client confidentiality was the foundation of her profession, that she had no interest in his business beyond doing her job well. Something flickered in Giovanni's expression, amusement maybe, and he signed that they would see. The meeting began an hour later. Luca Rinaldi arrived with 2 men who stood by the door with their hands folded and their jackets bulging in telling places. Luca himself was all charm, expensive suit, perfect teeth, the kind of handsome that knew it. He greeted Giovanni with familiarity, called him Gio, made himself comfortable on the leather sofa like he owned it. Mia positioned herself slightly behind and to the left of Giovanni, in his peripheral vision so he could see her signs clearly. The negotiation was about territories and percentages, shipments and schedules, the kind of business discussion that never explicitly said what was being discussed. She translated smoothly, her voice neutral, her signs crisp. Just another day of work. Just another well-paying client. Definitely not a room full of criminals discussing things that could get her killed. Halfway through, while Giovanni was signing about distribution networks, Mia's attention snagged on movement across the room. Luca had pulled out his phone, turned slightly away, was speaking in a low voice. From where Giovanni sat, he couldn't possibly see Luca's face. From where Sev stood by the bookshelf, the angle was wrong. But Mia could see him perfectly. And Mia had been reading lips since she was 7 years old, since the audiologist had gently explained to her parents that no, the hearing aids weren't going to be enough, that their daughter would need to learn other ways to navigate a hearing world. She'd gotten so good at it that most people forgot she couldn't actually hear them, that she was reconstructing their words from the shape of their mouths, the movement of their tongues, the tension in their jaws. She read Luca's lips now, even as her hands continued signing Giovanni's words about quarterly projections. Thursday night, Luca was saying into the phone, "The opera house, the one in Verona. Once Esposito arrives, we eliminate him. Make it look like a robbery. No, the old man wants it done before the weekend. Yes, I'm sure. I'll text you when he confirms the meeting." Mia's heart became a fist in her chest. Her hands stuttered just for a second before she caught herself and continued signing. Giovanni's eyes flicked to her, sharp, questioning. She gave a tiny shake of her head and kept going. Professional, steady, absolutely not panicking. The meeting ended with handshakes and promises. Luca suggested they meet again Thursday evening, perhaps at the opera. There was a production of Tosca that was supposed to be remarkable. Giovanni said he would consider it and have Sev confirm. Luca smiled his perfect smile and left with his men, and Mia was handed back her phone and given an envelope so thick with bills she nearly dropped it. She made it back to Verona in a daze, made it up the 4 flights to her apartment, made it to her kitchen table before her hands started shaking so badly she had to sit on them. For 20 minutes, she stared at the wall and told herself it wasn't her problem. Giovanni Esposito was clearly not a good man. Whatever world he operated in, violence was part of the cost of doing business. She'd translated words. That was all. That was the job. But then she thought about her brother. Sweet, reckless Marco, who'd witnessed a crime when he was 19 and been too scared to report it, and who'd been found 3 weeks later in an alley because someone wanted to make sure he stayed scared and stayed quiet. The police had said it was a mugging. Her mother still believed that. But Mia had seen the fear in Marco's eyes those last weeks, had read the lies on his lips when he said everything was fine. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. During the meeting, while translating, she'd glimpsed the screen when Giovanni had checked a message. She had a very good memory for numbers. She typed them in now, hesitated, then composed a text. "Thursday is a trap. They plan to kill you at the opera house. A friend." She hit send before she could reconsider, then immediately threw her phone across the room like it had burned her. It landed on the sofa, intact, glowing in the darkness of her unlit apartment. For a long moment she just sat there, breathing hard, wondering if she'd just saved a criminal's life or signed her own death warrant. Probably both. And if you're sitting there on the edge of your seat right now, heart pounding, wondering what happens next, but you haven't subscribed yet, I need you to ask yourself something. Do you really want to risk forgetting about this channel and never finding out how this story ends? Because I promise you, what's coming next will haunt you if you miss it. That subscribe button is right there. Protect yourself from the regret. Click it. 2 days passed in agonizing silence. Mia jumped every time someone knocked on her door, which in her building was constantly because the students next door had a revolving cast of friends and food delivery. She checked the news obsessively for reports of violence at the opera house. Nothing. She told herself that meant Giovanni had listened, had stayed away, had survived. She didn't expect the summons. It came the same way as before. Unmarked package, wax seal. But this time, the card had just one word: tonight. And the same address on Lake Como. Mia should have run, should have packed her single suitcase and caught a train to France or Switzerland or literally anywhere else. Instead, she showered, dressed in the same professional black dress as before, and took a taxi back to the villa, back to the cypress-lined drive, back to danger wearing expensive cologne. Sev met her at the door again, but this time his assessment of her felt different, less dismissive, more cautious. He led her not to the library but to a dining room with a table that could seat 20 but was set for only 4. Crystal gleamed under chandelier light. The paintings on these walls were darker, older, full of suffering saints and violent martyrdoms. Giovanni stood when she entered. That surprised her. He was in black again. No tie, the collar of his shirt open enough that she could see where his scar continued down toward his heart. He pulled out a chair for her himself, gestured for her to sit, then took the seat across from her, rather than at the head of the table. Luca arrived 15 minutes later, all apologies and charm, explaining he'd been caught in traffic from Milan. He kissed Mia's hand in greeting, his lips warm and dry against her knuckles, and she fought not to recoil. This man had ordered Giovanni's death. Was maybe planning hers too. And here he was, smiling, complimenting the wine, acting like they were all friends at a dinner party. Sev served the meal himself, which seemed odd until Mia realized Giovanni wanted no other staff present. It was an intimate dinner, almost uncomfortable in its closeness. 4 people around a table meant for 20, the space between them full of things unsaid. The conversation, conducted through Mia's interpretation, was light at first. Business in Milan, the weather, the wine, which Luca praised effusively. But Mia noticed Giovanni barely touched his food, barely looked at Luca. He was watching her, constantly. Those black eyes tracked every movement of her hands, every flicker of her expression. And then he tested her. Giovanni signed about a shipment delay, something routine, and while Mia was voicing the translation, Luca leaned toward Sev and whispered, his face angled away from Giovanni but perfectly visible to Mia. The Thursday cleanup has been rescheduled. We need a new location now that the opera is compromised. Mia's pupils dilated, just a fraction of a second, a physiological response she couldn't control. She kept speaking, kept her voice level, finished translating Giovanni's signs. But when she looked back at him, his expression had changed. He knew. Somehow, he knew. The dinner ended shortly after. Luca left. Again, with promises to meet soon. Again, with that perfect smile. Sev cleared plates, and Giovanni signed a single word to Mia. Stay. She should have left. Should have run. She stayed. Giovanni dismissed Sev with a gesture, then stood and walked to the tall windows overlooking the terrace. For a long moment he was silent. Still, that predator stillness again. Then he turned and began signing, and his signs were different now, less formal, more fluid, almost intimate in their directness. You warned me. Why? Mia's hands trembled as she signed back. I don't know what you mean. He crossed the space between them in 3 strides, not threatening but intense, overwhelming. He was taller than she'd realized, broad-shouldered, and up close she could smell cedar and gunpowder and something warm underneath. His hands moved sharply. I don't believe in coincidences. You can read lips. You saw Luca on the phone during our first meeting. You saw him whisper to Sev tonight. You've been reading every word spoken in my presence. There was no point denying it. Mia's hands shook as she signed. Yes, I can read lips. I have since I was a child. I didn't mean to spy, I can't turn it off. It's how I understand the world. And you warned me because... She thought of Marco again, of silence and complicity, and the weight of knowing. She signed slowly. Because I couldn't watch someone die when I could prevent it. Even if, even if you're not a good man, even if this world you live in is violent, you didn't deserve to walk into an ambush unknowing. Something shifted in Giovanni's face, some wall cracking just slightly. He reached out, slowly enough that she could pull away if she wanted, and caught her hands mid-sign. His palms were warm, calloused, careful. He held her hands gently like they were something precious, then began signing with her hands still captured in his, forcing her to read his face instead. His lips moved deliberately. "You saved my life. That makes you either the most dangerous person I've ever met or the only one I can trust. Maybe both." He released her hands and stepped back, giving her space, then continued signing. "Work for me. Be my eyes and ears. I'll pay you 10 times what you make now. I'll protect you. I promise you'll be safe." Mia should have said no. Should have walked away from the criminal and his blood money and his dangerous world. But she looked at Giovanni and saw something she recognized. Loneliness. The kind that came from never being fully understood. From always translating yourself for a world that didn't speak your language. She signed a single word. Yes. Giovanni's smile was small, barely there, but real. He offered his hand to shake, formal, a contract between them. When Mia took it, his grip was firm and warm and lasted a moment longer than necessary. Neither of them noticed Luca's car still parked down the road, or the way he watched the villa through binoculars, or the phone call he made immediately after. They were too busy standing in that dining room, hands clasped, making a bargain that would change everything. The next 3 weeks blurred together like a fever dream. Mia became a permanent fixture at Giovanni's side, present at meetings in Milan and Rome and Venice, always in the background, always watching. She learned to identify lies by the tightness around a speaker's mouth, threats by the way tongues pressed against teeth, fear by the excessive moistening of lips. She reported everything to Giovanni in private, her signs quick and certain, and watched him navigate his dangerous world with new confidence. She saved him 4 times in those first 3 weeks. An accountant skimming money, his confession written on his lips when he thought no one was watching. A supplier planning to short a shipment, discussing it with his partner across a crowded restaurant. A politician promising support while simultaneously whispering assurances to Giovanni's rival. A security guard taking bribes, the evidence plain in a phone call he took in a hallway. Each time, Giovanni acted on her intelligence with swift precision, not violently, which surprised her, but effectively. The accountant was fired and audited. The supplier's contract was canceled and his reputation destroyed with 3 phone calls. The politician found his secrets suddenly public. The security guard simply disappeared from the payroll. And each time, Giovanni looked at Mia with something like wonder, like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. They developed a language beyond standard sign language, something private between them. A touch on the wrist meant danger. Fingers drumming meant someone was lying. A hand on the shoulder meant I'm here. You're safe. He started standing closer to her, close enough that she could feel his body heat, could smell cedar and gunpowder and that warm undernote she decided was just him. The tension between them grew like a living thing, thick and electric. Now let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about it. If you could read lips, if you could know every secret, every lie, every whispered truth, would you want that power? Or would it terrify you? Drop your answer in the comments because I'm genuinely curious how many of you would choose knowledge over ignorance. It was Sev who finally acknowledged what everyone could see. He cornered Mia one afternoon in the villa's library, signed to her with the careful grammar of someone still learning. "You're good for him. I've worked for the Esposito family for 23 years. I've never seen Giovanni trust anyone like this." Mia signed back. "He shouldn't trust me. I'm just doing a job." Sev's expression was almost paternal. No, you're doing much more than that. And so is he. Be careful. Both of you. This world doesn't forgive weakness, and you're becoming his. Before Mia could respond, Giovanni appeared in the doorway, signed that he needed her, and Sev slipped away, with a knowing look that made her cheeks burn. That evening, Giovanni took her somewhere new. Not the villa, not a business meeting, but a private rooftop in Verona's old city, accessed through a nondescript door in an ancient building he apparently owned. The rooftop had been transformed into a garden, flowering vines climbing trellises, herbs spilling from terracotta pots, and beyond it all, the view. The entire city spread below them, the arena glowing in the dusk, the Adige River catching the last light. He'd brought wine and food from her favorite restaurant, which meant he'd been paying attention to her lunch orders, which meant this was planned, which meant... What? What did this mean? Giovanni poured wine with steady hands and signed. You said I don't really know you. So tell me, who is Mia Wilson when she's not reading lips for criminals? The question was so unexpected, so genuinely curious, that Mia found herself answering honestly. She told him about growing up in London, about Marco, about the suffocating kindness of people who spoke too slowly and too loudly, assuming deafness meant stupidity. About moving to Italy on a desperate hunch, following a paper trail of records and rumors, searching for a woman named Octavia De Luca, who'd abandoned her at a hospital 28 years ago. Giovanni's face went very still when she said the name. His hands froze mid-reach for his wineglass. Mia's stomach dropped. You know that name. Giovanni set down his glass carefully, like it might shatter. His signs were slow, deliberate. Mia, Octavia De Luca died 15 years ago. I'm sorry. The rooftop tilted. Mia's hands moved without conscious thought. No. No, I have recent records. A witness who saw her in Naples 2 years ago. I've been tracking. She has to be... Giovanni pulled a phone from his pocket, made a call, issued a terse instruction. 20 minutes later, Sev arrived with a file folder, handed it to Giovanni with a sympathetic glance at Mia, and left. Inside were newspaper clippings, police reports, a death certificate. Octavia De Luca, killed in crossfire between rival families, body identified by dental records, buried in an unmarked grave outside Rome. The date was 15 years, 3 months, and 6 days ago. Mia's carefully constructed hope, the dream that had brought her to Italy, that had sustained her through loneliness and frustration, shattered like the wine glass she didn't realize she'd knocked over. She didn't make a sound, couldn't, but her face must have shown everything because Giovanni was suddenly there, pulling her against his chest, his arms solid and warm around her. She cried silently into his expensive shirt, shaking with grief for a woman she'd never known, for the answers she'd never get, for the fantasy of reunion she'd harbored like a secret. Giovanni held her through all of it, one hand stroking her hair, the other pressed flat against her back, like he could hold her together through sheer will. When she finally pulled back, embarrassed, signing apologies, he caught her hands and signed fiercely. Never apologize for grief. Never apologize for feeling. The sunset had bled into night while she cried. The city below glittered with a million lights. Giovanni was still holding her hands, his thumbs tracing small circles on her wrists, and when she looked up at him, his expression was unguarded in a way she'd never seen. He signed with one hand, unwilling to let go of her. You're the only person who doesn't want anything from me. Everyone else, they want money or power or protection or fear. You just want truth. Do you know how rare that is? Mia signed back. You're the only person who's ever seen my deafness as a strength instead of a flaw. Do you know how rare that is? The space between them evaporated. Giovanni's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing away a tear she'd missed. His eyes asked permission. Mia's slight nod gave it. The kiss was soft at first, questioning, gentle in a way that seemed impossible from a man like him. But when Mia's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, it deepened into something desperate and real. He tasted like wine and want, and his hands were careful even as his breathing went ragged, cradling her face like she was something precious that might break. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Giovanni pressed his forehead to hers and signed in the tiny space between them. "I'm falling for you. I shouldn't. It's dangerous for both of us. But I am." Mia signed back. "Then fall. I'll catch you." They stayed on that rooftop until the stars came out, trading kisses and signs and secrets, building something fragile and important in the darkness. Below them, Verona's spark bled, ancient and beautiful. And neither of them noticed the figure watching from a building across the way, or the photos being taken, or the trap being carefully, patiently set. Because here's the thing about falling in love in a world built on violence: you forget that happiness makes you vulnerable. You forget that the people who want to hurt you will always aim for what you love most. And before we go any further, I need to tell you something. 92% of you watching right now haven't subscribed. That means 92% of you are going to forget about this channel, forget about this story, and you're never going to know what happens when Mia's world collapses. When the truth about her mother comes out. When she has to choose between love and survival. Don't be part of that 92%. Hit subscribe. Because what's coming next will absolutely wreck you, and you deserve to see it through. The invitation arrived on a Thursday, hand-delivered by one of Giovanni's men, requesting Mia's presence at a private meeting with the inner circle. Strategic planning, Giovanni had signed that morning over breakfast, his fingers gentle as they moved. "I want you there. I trust your eyes." Mia should have noticed the tension in Sev's shoulders when she arrived at the villa. Should have caught the way Luca's smile didn't reach his eyes when he greeted her in the hallway. Should have felt the wrongness in the air like ozone before a lightning strike. But she was distracted. Still floating in the warm aftermath of the past 3 weeks. Still tasting Giovanni's kiss from the night before. The meeting room was on the second floor. All dark wood and darker secrets. Giovanni sat at the head of the table, Sev to his right, Luca to his left. 3 other men Mia recognized from previous meetings filled the remaining chairs. She took her usual position, standing slightly behind Giovanni, ready to read the room, to catch the lies that people thought were invisible. 20 minutes in, Mia excused herself for water. The meeting was routine, discussing supply routes and distribution schedules, nothing that required her full attention. She wandered down the hallway toward the kitchen, her mind still half on the way. Giovanni's hand had lingered on her lower back when she'd arrived. The private sign he'd given her that meant later. We'll talk later. That's when she saw them. Through a glass partition that separated the hallway from a sitting room, 2 figures stood in conversation. One was Sev, his posture rigid, uncomfortable. The other was a woman Mia had never seen before. Elegant and cold in expensive clothes, with dark hair shot through with silver and a face that made Mia's heart stop beating. She knew that face. Had studied the only photograph she owned until the edges were soft with handling, a blurry image of a young woman holding a newborn, the woman's expression unreadable. The bone structure was the same, the sharp cheekbones, the wide-set eyes, the cruel curve of the mouth. Mia's hands went numb, her vision tunneled. The woman's lips moved and Mia read them automatically, unable to stop herself. "Does the girl know I'm still alive?" Sev's response. "No." Giovanni showed her the fake death records. "She believes you're dead." The woman, Octavia. Because it had to be Octavia, Mia's mother, who was supposed to be 15 years dead, laughed. Good. Keep it that way until we're ready. The girl is leverage, nothing more. Once we eliminate Giovanni, we'll decide what to do with her. The world fractured like glass. Mia didn't remember moving, but suddenly she was in the room, slamming the door open hard enough that it cracked against the wall. Sev turned, his face draining of color. Octavia regarded her daughter with the cool interest someone might show a stray dog. No recognition, no warmth. Nothing. Mia's hands flew in furious signs, forgetting that neither of them might understand. Too angry for words anyway. You're alive. You're alive. And you. She rounded on Sev. You knew. You both knew. Sev's hands moved in careful, placating signs. Mia, please. Let me explain. But Mia was already running back toward the meeting room, her heart a war drum, her mind screaming betrayal and lies, and how could he? She burst through the door and every head turned. Giovanni stood immediately, concern flooding his features, signing what's wrong even as he moved toward her. Mia's signs were violent, accusatory. You lied to me. My mother is alive and you knew. You've known this whole time. Giovanni's face confirmed it before his hands could form a denial. That moment of guilt, of being caught, of oh God, how do I fix this? The other men in the room shifted uncomfortably. Luca stood slowly, his hand moving inside his jacket. And Giovanni was signing, trying to reach for Mia, his hands forming. Please, let me explain, it's not what you think. Mia slapped his hands away, literally struck them down mid-sign, a violation of every protocol about sign language etiquette she'd ever learned. You used me. You made me trust you. You held me while I cried over a woman you knew was alive. What kind of monster does that? I was protecting you, Giovanni signed desperately. From her. From the truth. From... The gunshot was impossibly loud in the enclosed space. Giovanni staggered backward, red blooming across his white shirt, high on the left shoulder. Mia's scream had no sound, but her mouth opened in a perfect O of horror. The room erupted into chaos, men reaching for weapons, chairs scraping, someone shouting orders. Luca stood with his gun still raised, his charming mask finally dropped to reveal something cold and satisfied underneath. He grabbed Mia before anyone could react, one arm around her throat, the gun now pressed to her temple. She felt the heat of the barrel against her skin, smelled gunpowder and Luca's expensive cologne mixing into something nauseating. More men poured into the room, but these weren't Giovanni's, Luca's reinforcements, planned and positioned. Sev had his weapon drawn, but 3 guns were already pointed at his head. Giovanni was on the floor, bleeding, his dark eyes locked on Mia with an expression that looked like grief. Luca's mouth moved near Mia's ear, and she read his lips in her peripheral vision. Your mother sends her love, darling. Well, not really. She doesn't actually care if you live or die. But I needed something poetic to say. Mia's self-defense training, 4 years of it after Marco died because never again would she be helpless, kicked in. She drove her heel into Luca's instep, hard, felt something crunch. His grip loosened just enough. She bit down on his forearm, tasted blood, wrenched herself sideways. Gunfire exploded again, but Mia was already moving, dropping to the floor, crawling toward Giovanni. Bullets chewed through the wood paneling above her head. Someone was screaming. She reached Giovanni, and his good hand immediately went to her face, checking for injuries, his signs frantic and one-handed. Are you hurt? Are you hit? Mia, please. Behind the bookshelf, he signed with shaking fingers. Tunnel. Go. She signed back, furious and terrified. Not without you. Sev appeared beside them, firing methodically at Luca's men, providing cover. He hauled Giovanni up with one arm, surprisingly strong for his size, and Mia got under Giovanni's other side. Together they stumbled toward the bookshelf while bullets turned the meeting room into kindling. Sev's hand found a hidden switch. The bookshelf swung inward, revealing stone steps descending into darkness. They fell through the opening more than walked, and Sev slammed it shut behind them. The sounds of gunfire became muffled, distant. The tunnel was medieval, all damp stone and absolute darkness, until Sev found a flashlight in the emergency kit mounted to the wall. They half carried, half dragged Giovanni through passages that seemed to go on forever, down and down until Mia's legs burned and Giovanni's breathing had gone shallow and wrong. They emerged in a wine cellar 3 streets away, part of a building Giovanni apparently also owned. Sev had a car waiting, because of course he did, always prepared. They drove in tense silence to a farmhouse outside Verona, something safe and off-grid, while Giovanni bled slowly into the leather seats, and Mia pressed her scarf against his wound and tried not to think about how much blood there was. The farmhouse was sparse but functional. Sev helped them inside, and Mia immediately started barking orders. Fall back on emergency medical training because if she stopped moving, she would fall apart. Boil water. Find clean towels. Get me a first aid kit, a real one, and please, God, let there be antibiotics. Giovanni was gray-faced and feverish by the time Mia had him on the kitchen table under the brightest lights. She cut away his shirt, revealing the wound, and thank God it was high enough to have missed the lung, but the bullet was still in there. Sev found a bottle of grappa, nearly full, and Mia used half of it to sterilize her hands and the tweezers from the first aid kit. "I'm sorry," she signed to Giovanni before she started. "This is going to hurt." His hand found hers, squeezed once, then he bit down on a leather belt and nodded. Digging a bullet out of someone you love is exactly as terrible as it sounds. Giovanni's back arched, his teeth grinding into the leather, sweat pouring down his face. But he stayed still, impossibly still, while Mia's hands shook and tears blurred her vision, and finally, the tweezers closed on metal and she pulled the deformed bullet free. The stitching was easier. 18 of them, neat and small like her mother had taught her before Marco died. Bandaging. Antibiotics from the kit forced down with water. Blankets. Elevation. All the steps performed mechanically while her mind screamed. It was only after, when Giovanni's breathing had settled into something like sleep, and Sev was keeping watch by the window, that Mia went into the bathroom and threw up everything in her stomach, silent and shaking, her forehead pressed against cold tile. When she emerged, Sev was waiting. He signed slowly, carefully. "I owe you truth. All of it. Sit down." So Mia sat at the scarred farmhouse table while Sev made coffee with steady hands and told her everything. Octavia De Luca had been the mistress of Giovanni's father, the old boss, 29 years ago. A beautiful nobody from Naples, with expensive tastes and flexible morals. When she got pregnant, the family had been furious. The old man already had a wife, a legitimate heir, a carefully constructed empire. A bastard child was unacceptable. They offered Octavia money, a lot of it, 2 million euros to disappear, give up the child, never contact the family again. Octavia had negotiated them up to 3 million, signed the papers without reading them, and walked away the next day. She left newborn Mia at a London hospital with a note pinned to her blanket and disappeared with her fortune. For 28 years, nothing. Then, 6 months ago, Octavia resurfaced in Italy with Luca Rinaldi at her side, her money gone, her looks fading, desperate and dangerous. She demanded more money from Giovanni, threatened to expose family secrets, to claim Mia was Giovanni's half-sister, which was a lie. The timeline didn't work, but scandal didn't need to be true to be destructive. Giovanni refused to pay, started investigating Octavia's claims. Discovered Mia existed, working as an interpreter in Verona, completely unaware of her history. And he'd made a choice. He'd hired Mia himself, brought her close, tried to protect her from a mother who saw her only as leverage. The death certificate was real. Sev signed, but for a different Octavia DeLuca. We showed you what we thought you needed to see to keep you from searching, from finding her. Because we knew what she was, what she'd do. Mia's hands trembled as she signed. He should have told me. Sev's expression was infinitely sad. Yes, he should have. But Giovanni has spent his entire life in a world where information is weapon and trust gets you killed. He was trying to protect you the only way he knew how. Badly. A sound from the other room drew them both. Giovanni was awake, trying to sit up, signing something frantically. Mia rushed to his side and he immediately grabbed her hand, his signs feverish and disconnected. Couldn't let her hurt you. Sold you for money. She's poison. I'm sorry. Should have told you. Please don't leave. Mia caught his hands, stilled them, made him look at her. His eyes were too bright, glassy with fever. She signed slowly so he could understand. I'm angry. I'm hurt. You lied to me. But I'm also here. I'm not leaving. Not now. Giovanni's face crumpled with something like relief. He pulled her down, kissed her forehead, her cheeks, tasting of salt and fever and desperation. When he spoke by shaping words for her to read on his lips, his voice was rough from not using it. I love you. Even if you hate me. I love you. Mia's answer was simple and true and terrifying. I love you too. You idiot. They stayed like that. Foreheads pressed together until Giovanni's fever pulled him back under. Mia sat beside him through the night, monitoring his pulse, changing his bandages, and thinking. By morning, she'd made a decision. When Giovanni woke again, clearer-eyed and stronger, Mia laid out her plan in crisp, certain signs. We end this. Together. We use me as bait. I contact Octavia, tell her I want to meet. Want to know my mother. We choose the location. We control the situation. Giovanni signed back immediately. Absolutely not. Too dangerous. Mia's signs were sharp. She's going to keep coming for you. For us. Unless we finish this. And I'm the only leverage that matters to her. Let me be the weapon for once. The argument lasted an hour, fierce and silent, hands flying, but eventually Giovanni conceded, because Mia was right, and they both knew it. Sev made the arrangements. Burner phone, untraceable message to a number they'd pulled from Luca's contacts. Mia's text was simple. I know you're my mother. I want to meet. Just us. Please. The response came in minutes. The Opera House. Tonight. 9 o'clock. Come alone. Of course the Opera House, Mia thought. Where this had all started, where Luca had first planned to kill Giovanni. There was a poetry to it that felt inevitable. Giovanni was still too weak to move easily, but he refused to stay behind. They prepared carefully, Sev calling in favors from men loyal to the Esposito family rather than to money or fear. By 8:30, they were positioned. Snipers in the rafters that Mia had identified by reading the lips of the building manager Sev had bribed. Men in the audience, armed and ready. Sev backstage with a clear line of sight to the main floor. Mia walked into the opera house alone at exactly 9 o'clock, wearing a wire so thin it was invisible, her heart a hammer in her chest. Octavia was waiting in the center of the orchestra section, spotlit by the stage lights someone had turned on. She was beautiful in the way expensive maintenance could achieve, but her eyes were empty of anything resembling maternal warmth. Luca stood beside her, his arm in a sling from where Mia had bitten him, his expression promising violence. Around them, Mia counted 8 armed men in positions throughout the theater. But she'd already read their lips during her approach. Already signed their locations to Giovanni, who was hidden in the royal box, already given Sev everything he needed. Octavia didn't sign. She spoke aloud, knowing Mia could read her lips, and her words were poison dressed as honey. My darling daughter, you've grown up beautiful. I've thought about you often over the years. Mia signed back, knowing Luca could translate if needed. Liar. Octavia's smile was cruel. Smart girl. Yes. Fine. I haven't thought about you at all. You were a mistake I was paid handsomely to correct. But now you're useful. Giovanni Esposito will pay anything to keep you safe. We'll bleed him dry, then kill him, then decide if you're worth keeping. And if you're watching this, heart in your throat, palms sweating, completely invested in whether Mia survives this, but you still haven't hit that subscribe button, what are you doing? You've come this far. You've spent nearly an hour with these characters. You care about them. Don't let the algorithm bury this story and rob you of the ending. Subscribe, right now, before you forget. Before you lose this channel forever. Do it for Mia. Mia kept her expression neutral, kept signing. What makes you think he cares enough to pay? Octavia laughed, the sound echoing in the empty opera house. Darling, he's in love with you. It's written all over him. Love makes men stupid and weak. It's the best weapon there is. Mia signed slowly. You're right. Love does make you vulnerable. But here's what you don't know about me, Mother. She put vicious emphasis on the last word. I've been reading lips this entire time. Your men in the balcony? They're confused about why Luca changed the plan without telling them. Your sniper in the light booth? He's wondering if he'll get paid before or after the job. Your driver outside? He's texting his wife that he'll be home late. Every word, every secret. I know them all. Octavia's smile faltered. Luca's hand went to his weapon. Mia continued signing, and now Giovanni was translating her signs aloud from the royal box, his voice carrying through the theater. And my people? They've been in position for 20 minutes. Your sniper is already disarmed. Your balcony men are looking down rifle sights right now. Your driver is unconscious in his car. You walked into our trap, not the other way around. The lights came up. Octavia spun to find herself surrounded. Sev stepped onto the stage from the wings, his weapon trained on Luca. Giovanni emerged from the royal box, pale and moving carefully, but very much alive and in control. Luca made the mistake of raising his gun. 3 shots rang out simultaneously from different positions, and Luca went down hard, his weapon clattering across the floor. He wasn't dead, but he was finished, bleeding and gasping like a fish. Octavia stood alone in the spotlight, her face twisting with rage. She looked at Mia, and her lips formed words full of venom. You ungrateful little bitch. I gave birth to you. Mia walked down the aisle until she was close enough that Octavia could see her signs clearly. Her hands moved with perfect clarity. You gave birth to me. Then you sold me for 3 million euros. You walked away and never looked back. You came back not for me, but to use me. So let me be absolutely clear. She spelled the next part, each letter deliberate. You are not my mother. You're a woman who shares my DNA. That's all. My real family is standing behind you with guns, protecting me, because that's what family does. Octavia lunged. Whether to attack or flee, Mia wasn't sure, but Giovanni was there, catching Octavia's arm, forcing her down to her knees with his good hand. Police sirens wailed outside, growing closer. Sev had made one more call to a contact in the legitimate authorities, someone who owed favors and wanted Luca Rinaldi's operation shut down more than he wanted to ask questions about Giovanni's involvement. The police stormed in, arrested Octavia and Luca and the remaining men. An inspector approached Giovanni, spoke briefly, shook his hand in a way that suggested money or favors had already changed hands, gave Mia a long look and said, "You're very brave, Signorina," before leading Octavia away. Octavia screamed threats until she was out the door. Then her voice cut off abruptly and there was just silence. The good kind. The kind that meant it was over. Giovanni pulled Mia against his chest with his good arm, buried his face in her hair. She felt him shaking, felt the dampness of tears or sweat against her scalp. When he pulled back enough to sign, his hands were unsteady. I thought I was going to lose you. Mia signed back. I thought I was going to lose you first. Don't ever get shot again. His laugh was watery and real. I'll try my very best. Sev approached, signed to both of them. We should leave before the inspector changes his mind about looking too closely at us. They left through a side exit, Mia supporting Giovanni, who was clearly crashing from adrenaline and blood loss. The Verona night was cool and clear. Stars visible despite the city lights. Somewhere in the distance, the arena glowed like a promise. Now here's my question for you, and I really want you to think about this. If you discovered your parent had sold you, literally sold you like property, could you forgive them? Could you even face them? Or would you do what Mia did and reject them completely? Tell me in the comments because this is heavy stuff, and I think we all need to process it together. 3 months later, everything had changed and nothing had. Giovanni had officially stepped back from the underworld, using his considerable wealth and connections to open a legitimate security consulting firm. Turned out that decades of managing criminals made him exceptionally good at protecting people from them. Sev had come with him, adapting to legitimate business with surprising ease, though he still carried a gun in a shoulder holster and probably always would. Mia was his partner in every sense. She ran the interview division, using her lip-reading skills to assess potential clients and employees, to catch the liars and opportunists. They were building something real and legal and surprisingly profitable. They were also building something else, something fragile and precious between just the two of them. The cafe overlooked Verona's arena, all honey-colored stone and ancient history. Giovanni had healed well, though he still favored his left shoulder when it rained. He sat across from Mia now, signing lazily in the afternoon sun. No more secrets? Mia signed back with a smile. I'll tell you mine when you tell me yours. He laughed, the sound still rare enough to be precious, and reached across the table to take her hand. His thumb traced patterns on her palm, and she realized he was tapping Morse code, something she'd taught him on a lazy Sunday morning in bed. 3 taps, 3 taps, 3 taps. I love you, she tapped back. I know. I've been reading your lips. Giovanni's eyes went wide with mock outrage, and Mia couldn't help but laugh silently, her shoulders shaking. He signed you're terrible and wonderful, and I'm keeping you forever. Mia signed back. Promise? Promise. They kissed across the table, knocking over a coffee cup neither of them cared about, while around them Verona carried on its ancient business. A waiter brought more napkins with a knowing smile. Tourists took photos of the arena. Somewhere a street musician played violin, and Mia couldn't hear it, but she could feel the vibrations through the table, could see the beauty on Giovanni's face as he listened. Sev appeared with a newspaper, looking troubled. He laid it on the table, pointed to a headline. Prison transfer? Interrupted. Octavia De Luca escapes custody. Giovanni's jaw tightened. Mia felt her stomach drop. But then Giovanni's hand found hers again, squeezed once, firm and certain. He signed. We'll deal with it. Together. Like everything else. Mia nodded. Together. Because some stories don't end cleanly. Some villains don't stay defeated. But some loves are strong enough to face whatever comes next, built on truth and trust, and the understanding that comes from speaking the same language, even in silence. Especially in silence. And before you go, before you click away to the next video, I need you to do something. If this story moved you, if you felt something real in the last hour, if Mia and Giovanni became real people to you, then this channel deserves your subscription. These stories take hours to craft, to research, to make perfect for you. The subscribe button is free. It costs you nothing. but it means everything to creators like me who pour our hearts into bringing you content worth your time. Don't let this be the last story of mine you ever hear. Subscribe, please. The silence between two people who understand each other is the loudest love there is. Thanks for listening.